Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is episode number 83 of the Sports Consiglieres Podcast. I am your co-host, Jim Whalen. Along with me is my friend, my pal, the happily married man of 25 years, Jerry Calla. Jerry, how are you doing on this fine Monday? It's a bye week, so I don't know. It's kind of weird. We had to take last week off and just to recoup the way the season's going. So
Well, apparently the Giants took last week off as well.
yeah, they thought the game was on Sunday, but recapping the game, they lost to the Pats 33-15. I thought they were either going to have either a good win or a bad loss. Obviously, with this season, they got a bad loss. Um, you know, I thought Kafka had a couple questionable calls. They were down, I guess, what 17-0, went for it, fourth down. Koo with the botched field goal that would have changed things because it was what 17-7. I made 17-10, and then Patriots went back and scored. Of course, we got the notice that Brian Cox was fired too. I didn't even know he was assistant DL defensive lineman coach. Giants are at 2-11. Um, we're hoping that the Patriots have the same storyline as the Giants have next year, that they get the right coach and that the right fit. But they're still looking for a coach. Joe Schoen addressed the media this week on the bye week. So there's a lot to get to. But first and foremost, 83. What do you think on 83? Ernie Gray or no?
There's only one, Ernest Gray, baby.
Ernest Gray. So with that, Jerry, a lot to digest here. So what do you think about the game, the coaching search, Joe Shane's comments, and where do we go from here with 4 games
Well,
left?
listen, it looks like New England has the right guy. I think the Patriots, I was very impressed. Very physical football team. They had a lot of hitters, and it really exemplifies the way Mike Vrabel played the game. There's a lot of good things going on in New England. The offense, the defense. They totally dominated the Giants, all phases of the ball. There's a lot of things going on, with this team. I just can't believe that things are getting worse. And yes, it was a bad loss. They played well. New England played very well, but the Giants haven't played this bad in a long time. Putting that aside, the fact, once again, okay, you have your third overall pick of the NFL draft sitting with a Parker on the bench because apparently he can't go from point A to point B without a chaperone. And that's very disappointing. It's the second time that this has happened. It doesn't happen overnight. So somebody missed something, I think, in this kid's background, because I can't believe that things like this didn't happen at Penn State. That's number one. And number two, people are inferring, they're not really saying, but at this point yet, but they're basically saying that, Dable really didn't discipline this kid, that this is nothing new. So again, when you think things can't get any worse, the fact that he sat the first quarter, right, for a nonsensical reason, for a reason that shows that he's not ready to be a pro athlete, he cannot act or behave like a professional. And then the whole thing with Koo kicking the ground, that was something out of Charlie Brown. And, you just really want to put your foot through the TV sometimes. And we can put a lot of the things that happen in the game to the side. New England was extremely physical, whatever. But I think you really focus on those two things. And it's just one thing after another, not with this team, but with this organization. Okay. So we go Carter, having to be disciplined second time, right? Apparently now it's the interim coach's problem to try to instill some discipline and get some culture back in the building. And
Yeah,
then Joe Shane,
as he tries to win his own job,
as
like
he's
he's
trying
trying
to fight for
to.
his own career, right? And then you get into when things couldn't get any worse, right? Then you're going to tell me, or you're trying to make a statement 4 days, I believe, or 3.5 days after the game, you're going to fire the assistant defensive line coach, right? I think the game was Monday. He got fired on Friday. So yeah, 4 days, right? Um, Now you're going to fire a guy that I think if the players had his passion and his toughness that he played with, we'd be a lot better off. But yet now we're firing the assistant defensive line coach. That's the third coach fired. They fired more coaches than they have wins. And then you have the stupid, which is the right word, the Joe Schoen press conference, which if I had $20 for every time he started with, I understand your question, but I think he blamed the Warren Commission, the Nixon administration, and everybody else. He took, I would say, he stuck his toe in the accountability pool, and then he really was going like this. And I don't think that he instilled any type of confidence in any Giant fans' mind after that press conference. Again, he sounded like a guy that knows he's not on solid footing. His job status is not cemented, and it's just one thing after another truly with this team. And with all this being said, they're probably going to wind up beating the Redskins this weekend. But it's just, changes need to be made, I think throughout the whole building, and it really needs to be done. I mean, at this point, it's all speculation where they're going to go because, quite frankly, before we get into, and I know people have to sell newspapers, people have to get clicks, people have to get TV ratings. You talk about Shula from the Rams. You want to throw out Mike Tomlin wiggling out of Pittsburgh, whatever, even though they had a tremendous win on Sunday yesterday. But before we could really get into who's going to be the next coach of this team, I think we really should be looking at who might possibly be the next general manager of this team. And it's bad football, it's losing, and the things that are going on, you're not going to be successful. And I saw something else the other day where Carl Banks addressed this, where is anybody holding anybody accountable in this locker room, in this organization? And he said something to me that was very telling. So here's Carl Banks, story Giant career, now is basically the color guy along with Bob Papa, has a podcast. Obviously, he has unlimited access, which he should throughout the building. And he says now it's to the point where he feels that nobody's really taking accountability for their own play. Nobody is really holding a teammate accountable. And this is a great term that he used. He goes into the building now and he senses passion and hostility because everybody's mean mugging him, meaning the players, when he's walking through the cafeteria, because I think what's going on here is the truth hurts. He's speaking the truth. And instead of the players, basically holding one another accountable, their anger is venting in Carl Banks's direction, which he's just stating the obvious. And
well, and I think I listened to the same thing. He said he's stating what everybody else is seeing, and he earned that respect. He's got the respect going in. But I think one thing they have a lot of talent on the roster. We talked about that, but I don't think they have any true leaders. You had leaders throughout the times, but not true leaders. And listen, Dart's a rookie.
Yeah, he's a rookie.
In time. And then it was nice when they had Dart and Scattaboo, but Scattaboo's hurt. So I don't know. I think I'm looking more of a defensive leader. Dexter Lawrence has been here 7 years. Brian Burns is he's putting up all pro numbers.
I think the fact that and I'm glad you brought up Burns, Jimmy, because I think now as we're going forward, I think he's starting to step out of the shadows a little. But again, think about this, right? What does it really say about the leadership of the team is this is year 2 for him. And there's been other guys, Dexter Lawrence for one, but again, Dexter Lawrence, besides saying, yeah, I got to do a better job. And, oh, by the way, I'm the most double team player in football. He doesn't strike me as somebody that's providing leadership. And, I think he's really having a down year. You can't dispute that. The numbers don't lie. And again, if we have to hear from either him or Andre Patterson, about how many times, and it's a true statement that he does get double teamed often, but he's far from causing destruction and havoc as he did last year before his injury. Maybe he's not fully healed. I don't know. But, his play is obviously an issue, and outside of Burns, and occasionally Okorike, and, the secondary is awful and they spent a lot of money there. I mean, the defense, if you would have told me that the defense would still be a year later, ranked where they are against the run and overall as a unit, and the fact that they did spend some money in the secondary with Holland and Adebo and drafting Carter and nothing has changed. I mean, there's a problem there, and I think, and this is just me speculating, I think there's people on that defensive coaching staff that weren't happy that Charlie Bullen was promoted to the interim defensive coordinator. He bypassed some guys that served that role for other teams. And I think, to be honest with you, Brian Cox probably got fired for really speaking his mind and making his feelings known. And he probably overstepped a line, if you will, but that's Brian Cox, in a nutshell. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, I heard when Bullen actually took over, he was actually praising Cox for some of the things that he was doing. They were kind of going back to square one with a few things that he felt needed to be done in practice. And now a week and a half later, Cox is not good enough to do anything, and he subsequently gets fired. It's an absolute joke that you fire the assistant defensive line coach. I'm sorry. It's just a bad state that the organization is in, and they need to turn over the keys, to an actual adult, and somebody can really come in and really clean house. So I think that's where we're at. You're at 2-11. You're having a worse year than last year record-wise, and it's frustrating because we've seen good things in Denver and we've seen good things in a lot of games, and they have no ability to close games, but there's a culture problem, I think. That's evident with Carter, and now I'm further going to speculate, was that the issue with Neal? I know, Neal hasn't, been able to get on the field. With Banks, were they allowed to come in and kind of do things at their pace? I don't know, but that's the issue that we're having with Carter. Is he's, I know he came in and he finally got a sack, but man, listen, this is the third overall pick in the draft. I mean, something has to give here.
Yeah, I was doing research for the show, and I guess like the over and under for sacks for him was 7.5. Early on, there was a poll about that, and more people thought he got over 7.5 sacks than that. But I think for the franchise, I think if you look at Troy Aikman on the broadcast, he said they got to get this right. They got to get somebody with experience, and I think just living this for the last couple of weeks and just trying to find out what happened and trying to get ready for the podcast. I mean, did you hear anything about Bill Parcells saying anything way back when to look at Dan Campbell when he was back in New Orleans, that's somebody that they should look at, but for some reason the Giants didn't do it, the Mara families didn't do it, the Tisch family didn't do it, and they hired Joe Judge. Did you hear anything back that? I was just thinking about
I remember. I remember.
I mean, what would have happened if they had a Dan Campbell here?
Yeah, I mean, again, you see what's going on in Detroit. Results aside, and we referenced this on this show. He came in. Most people thought he had a kooky, is the word, right? Introductory press conference, but he was trying to prove a point, and maybe he didn't articulate it well enough, and it wasn't received, as he hoped. But we're going to be a tough football team. We're going to run the ball. We're going to be physical. And again, I think he's done a great job, in Detroit. Everybody thought when they got Goff, that he was just going to be there, holding the fort down until the next guy. He's played well. But, again, the Giants do wacky things And I always said this, and it's funny, you referenced him being highly recommending Campbell, and they went with Judge. Meanwhile, Belichick recommended Judge, gave Judge a very high recommendation to the Mara, or the Mara family. But if you remember, I don't know if you remember this story, when George Young hired Fossil, okay, Fossil was across the street. I'm dating myself now, where the old stadium and the old setup. Fossil was across the street in the hotel. George Young, this is before cell phones. George Young went down to his car to go meet Fossil to invariably offer him the job. Mara was in the building looking for him because there was the return of Parcells possibly happening. Parcells agreed to come back. By the time George Young came back, he told Mara that he offered Fossil the job, and they didn't want to renege on that offer, after throwing it out there. And again, that's the classy thing to do. But I'm just saying that's just another example. Like, the Giants never have their ducks in a row. Like, if when that, and I'm going back now, right, when Fossil came in, okay, where if you really thought you could get Parcells to come back, why in God's name would you not put everything on hold until you knew that before offering the guy the job? And I'm just saying, like, that's the Giants in a nutshell. Like, oh, we're going to be classy, right? We're going to be, and I understand that. We don't want the perception, hey, we're offering guys jobs and then reneging. I get that. But why in God's name did you offer him the job, right? Like, and I'm just saying, it just seems that all the ducks are never in a row. And you look at this year, like, the things that happen, that have happened, shouldn't happen at this level, right? You have the whole thing. You have a kicker that can't stay healthy. Let's try to force him. Let's bring in a guy who has no experience, misses extra point. It's just bizarre things just seem to happen. When things are going bad with the Giants, there's always bizarre things happening. And at some point, somebody, ownership, somebody has to say, you know what, we need to finally take, this coat of paint off the wall, prime the walls, right, and go with new colors and move forward and really clean up what is going on in the building, because there is definitely a disconnect. I do agree with one thing that Joe Schoen did harp on, is that he feels that this football team, and we've seen this happen, it just hasn't happened for 4 quarters, is that this team does have talent. They do have talent. This is going to be an attractive job. We know that. Wide receiver, yes. Neighbors, yes. Right? Robinson, right? Now you Scatterboo, Tracy's. I'm still a big Tracy guy. Pair him with Scatterboo. You got the quarterback. The offensive line has performed very, very well this year. Okay. You got talent on defense that's underperforming. So are they a complete team? No, but they're much better than the record indicates. It's going to be an attractive job, but we need somebody to come in to just get rid of, this stupidity. And that's what it is. It's just stupidity. Everybody's trying to hang Chris Mara being involved in scouting and everything. And that was one of the things that excited me about when the Giants did hire Schoen, because if you remember, it's the first time they've hired a GM outside the building since George Young. We went from George Young to Ernie Accorsi to Jerry Reese, right, to Gettleman. Everybody was in the building. And, it's just been disappointing. Say what you want about Schoen. He has to answer for the record. And at this point, I don't think, because now what I'm worried about is if you let Schoen bring the next coach in, all right, he's going to go with somebody who's familiar with him or to him, right? Obviously, that's how most business is conducted in any sport. And now, if this doesn't work, you're further set back. I just don't think that with Schoen's record, the things that have gone on, I don't think he should be coming back at the end of the year. And I know that you have half of ownership is going through a personal health issue. But again, at some point, something needs to be done way sooner than later. And I just don't think you could let Shane call the next coach. I really don't.
Oh, I think I agree with you because I mean, you look at the body of work. I mean, first off, Carter's. I mean, he's I don't. If they try to trade him, I don't even know what they would get for him. I mean, it just seems like there's nobody in that locker room that's holding this kid to task. And I guess what was Dable doing? And the other thing with Cox, they were saying that he had a connection with Dable. So I don't know if there was strife. I think I more agree with your scenario. I think that Cox probably voiced his opinion on who was selected. And there again, I think that I would rather have Brian Cox as defensive coordinator. At least he gives you some instant credibility. You're talking about NFL journeyman. He coached in a lot of different places. He's a fiery guy. He's going to hold people to task. I mean, but he's walking out the door. But if you look at Joe Schoen, Evan Neal, Devontae Banks, Jalen Hyatt, you mentioned Abdul Carter, number 3 pick overall. Holland they got. They had Waller from the tight ends from the Raiders. He was a bust. There's some rumblings about Winston and Wilson. I mean, what happens if Winston started? He seemed like he started the season. Who knows if you would have saw Dart? I think that he played a lot better. And also, we even referenced on the show the people they let go. Obviously, Saquon Barkley leaves and wins a Super Bowl. Daniel Jones, unfortunately, he got hurt yesterday. But Indiana's playoff contender. You have Big Cat Williams, Julian Love, Xavier McKinney. Bredesen, I mean, BJ Hill. I mean, a lot of players walked out of here, and that could be helping his team. So I think that you said it last episode. I think the team needs a cleansing, and it seems like a nice guy. Seems like he wants to do the right thing. But man, I mean, it's just I don't know, but it's an attractive job, like you said. If you look at Chicago, you look at New England. You have the 2 quarterbacks there. Somebody's going to come out from the shadows and say, I want this job. So, but we'll see. But
and just remember, let me just add really quick too, because you referenced Campbell and Judge. Just remember, when Vrabel was available, the Giants didn't even interview him.
True. So I mean, I don't know, and Kafka, like I said, he's just caught in a bad spot. I think that game call.
He's caught in the shitstorm. That's what it is.
Yeah. So I mean, he's the guy with the shovel behind the elephant. So I mean, yeah.
Hold on, let me get my pad. I got to write that down.
Yeah. So, but anyway,
that's the second greatest thing you've ever said.
What was the first thing?
About the umbrella.
No,
he walks through
walks through the raindrops.
Yeah, without getting wet.
But I think that if you look, there are some core. Obviously Dart looks like they hit on that one, and then Neighbors, Andrew Thomas, they have him locked up to 2029. Runyon, John Michael Schmitz. It seems like he's kind of working himself. I know he was a little bit undersized. Seemed like he's working back. Scatteraboo. Johnson, although I mean he's getting blasted for dropping that pass, but against New England. But I mean that was a tough play.
Yeah, there's parts there. There's parts.
And then the other thing too, I think
Hubbard's not bare.
Yeah, and one thing I will blame Shane for too is just having a big cornerback, because I mean if you look at some of the receivers that you have, AJ Brown, you have Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Some of the quarterbacks are undersized. I think you need a bigger cornerback to kind of muscle up with these guys. You're playing those guys twice a year. I mean, and they're undersized, but who knows?
But think of it like this really quick, and you talk about Shane, right? Let's put Carter aside, because again, let's be fair. Yes, he was drafted at 3. Okay, he's a rookie. Sometimes, as we know, people need that first year to get acclimated to playing at the next level. He's got some other things going on, so let's just table him, right? But look at Shane, right? You drafted Neal, right? 7th, I think that was. Am I making that up or no? Right?
Yeah, it sounds about right.
So, high first round pick. Guy's a healthy scratch every week. That's how bad it is, right? Banks, is reduced to running back kicks, and I could catch more passes in a season than Hyatt because he just, no matter who they bring in, from Bo Collins, okay, to Hodgins, right? He just keeps dropping, and others, are making catches, making plays. Here's a guy that was, the Bolitnikoff Award winner. Shane moved up. That's three draft picks that are contributing zero, right? Where two guys are basically in street clothes every week. At some point, again, whoever Joe Schoen is making that decision, right, has to answer for that. I mean, that's you're getting zero out of a guy that you took in the top 10, okay, where others were surprised that you went with Neil, but that's neither here for that. But the fact is that guy, right, is a healthy scratch. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. And then Hyatt, we hear this whole thing about what he did in the off season. Again, not very little productivity. Can't create separation. There's a lot of things. And Banks is just god awful. And what drives me crazy now about Banks is, put the talent aside, is I don't think he could pay attention for 4 quarters. And I think you see him, there's been a lack of hustle. Okay. He's not engaged. And for where he got drafted, it is unacceptable. It's mind-boggling.
Well, even unengaged, I know what Carter got called out too for sitting on the bench the first quarter. I mean, he got benched the first quarter. But I mean, think of it, you don't cheer on your teammates. You don't find out what's going on. You don't find out, well, just watching the game, what are they doing? I mean, that's all a part, learning from your mistakes. But he's sitting on the bench, sitting there moping. I mean, it didn't help anything. It's not helping anybody. So I don't know, but I'm optimistic because besides the New England game, they've been in every game, and they've been competitive. They have the talent. It's just that I guess coaching is not
dysfunction though. The Carter situation, that's dysfunction. Again, yes, he has to be a pro, right? And it happens once. All right, so be it, right? It happens twice. Chances are, okay, this has probably been an ongoing thing that needs some serious correction. But again, it's like anything else, right? They've alluded to Dable, being a little bit too friendly sometimes, with the players. That all comes into play, which again is why he no longer is coaching in the NFL right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess you go back to when he tried to slap Malik Neighbors' hand way back when. I mean, you trying to be friendly.
Yeah.
Obviously, you left you hanging there. So, but they got to get this. They got to get this one right. So I don't know, but who have you heard that's out there that you think?
Well, I mean, again, what's going to happen now is, again, you're hearing, I think, a lot of things that are coming with the assumption that Shane is there. So I think we need to preface this. If Shane is there, okay, you're looking at, I would say, he's not going anybody proven. That's my opinion. He's going to look at coordinators, okay? Shula's name keeps coming up. Chris Shula, defensive coordinator from the Rams. I know everybody gets happy about that because everybody loves the McVay coaching tree. He comes in, he's your head coach, he runs your defense. I'm sure he's going to bring an offensive person that's with him at the Rams now. But his name keeps coming up. I just think his name just keeps coming up because, the Rams are 10-3 and he's the hot guy. I think before you go into the coach, I mean, hey, listen, right away, if somehow a guy like Mike Tomlin's available, he's somebody that excites me. But again, who is leading the charge for the coach? Is it Joe Schoen? Okay. Or is it going to be somebody new? And again, like we said, who that person is, where they come from, that'll dictate, what really goes on, with this hire.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens, but I don't know. We'll see. They got about 4 games left. They play Washington this week, and then I think they play
And
Minnesota
let's not
at home.
forget too, I think there's going to be a lot of openings this year. It seems
Yeah.
like the last few years there's always openings, like a lot of openings. I think this year there's going to be a lot.
But what other jobs are they going to be out there?
I
Atlanta.
really couldn't see the Raiders going back to Pete Carroll for another year. I know it's only been one. That's number one. Okay, you have the situation in Tennessee. I really don't think Kevin Stefanski is happy still being the head coach of Cleveland. That's another job. I could see somebody not finishing strongly, not making the playoffs. A job that I thought a few weeks ago would have been open. I don't think that's any longer the case. Is Miami? They had a kind of
Well,
resurgence,
listen,
if you will,
the players are playing for him. They won
without a
what three
doubt.
straight,
You know what's
so they're
interesting
playing for
about that is when they fired the general manager. Okay, I unfortunately that was the wake up call, and these guys. I had this conversation this morning with somebody. McDaniel is like that quirky guy that there's something about him that I think the players are attracted to him. And I think he's a player's coach, and these guys are playing their rear ends off for him, and the results have shown that these last few weeks.
Well, I mean, if you look at Miami, they haven't won a playoff game since '98. So you figure they had to deal with New England, and then had to deal with
Yeah,
Buffalo
that's
a couple of years,
wrong place, wrong
a
time.
couple, a couple of years. But I mean, I could see Atlanta. I don't know if Raheem Moore is gonna.
Atlanta, I think, is another one.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know about Harbaugh. I mean, I don't know Tomlin. I think that win this past weekend probably helped his cause. I don't know. Maybe change the scenery will help. But like I said, I think there's going to be a couple you know vacancies open. But it just moving forward, Bobby Akereke, Walter Payton Man of
Yes.
the Year award, and also, unfortunately, you sent me this new Bob Ropistelli. We had him on the podcast. He ended up passing away last month, so I paid tribute to him on our podcast. But I appreciate you letting me know they passed away, and also, giving me his name so we get him on the podcast. So I think that was a
Yeah,
good fit. So,
great guy. Really passionate, about his book, and I think what kind of goes like anything else in life is, his dad was a legendary player for the Giants, was in the front office for the Giants, and I think what the one thing that I think we could both agree on about Bob, besides him writing a book about his dad and his passion for the Giants, is the work that Bob and the Robustelli family does up in Connecticut. Very community active, very active in the community. Has done a lot for the community, and it was great to have him on the show.
yeah, yeah, it definitely was. It'll be missed. But turning to playoffs, who do you think are contenders and who do you think are pretenders? I'll give you a couple. Right now, Rams 10-3,
I like the
Packers 9.
Rams. I actually like Seattle.
Okay.
I like their offense coming out of the NFC. I like the Rams. I was really disappointed. I try to root um, for Tampa Bay, for Todd Bowles, Jersey guy, Mayfield. I think that's kind of like a good marriage. And, Mayfield was kind of dumped, if you will, by the Browns. I think, unfairly. And, Bowles with the Jets coming back, they just, that's a bad loss to the Saints.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just a bad loss.
But I mean, the only thing I will say is that they're getting healthy, and then I guess
Yeah.
the probability that they'll win the division.
Got to win that game at
it-
home, though.
yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. But yeah, Green Bay 9-3-1, Philadelphia 8-4, Tampa 7-6, Seattle 10-3, Frisco at 9-4, and the Bears at 9-4. The Bears and Green Bay, that was a good game yesterday. But
It was.
are you surprised?
AFC, I really like. I like the way New England is built. And I do like Denver.
Yeah, well, Denver 11-2, New England 11-2, Jacksonville 9-4. New coach Liam Cohen, and then Steelers are 7-6, and then you also have the
And I
Bills.
think, unfortunately, now I think the Colts take a little bit of a nosedive.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess they who do you have? Riley Leonard from Richardson's still out, so they have Riley Leonard. But who
And
knows? But
Bert
I mean,
Jones.
but I look at Minnesota. I mean, you had Darnold and you had Daniel Jones in your quarterback room, and you let both of them walk, and you had JJ McCarthy. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know who their GM is, but I don't know. O'Connell is definitely an offensive
Yeah.
minded coach, and I don't know what happened there, but they stuck with McCarthy, and I don't know that they're not having the season that they expected. But
No,
anyway,
without question.
well, we had to cover this just for the fact that I think the MLS carried the day on Saturday. You had a 38-year-old Messi, 2 assists, given Miami their first MLS Cup. So what do you think of the MLS Cup, and what do you think about the league 30 years in and kind of transitioning into the World Cup and the all changes that's going on in MLS?
Well, I think the from what I've seen, the ratings were good. Yeah, ultimately it's at this point, with the World Cup coming in to the United States over the summer, and then the MLS changing the calendar, going to the FIFA calendar. It's good for the league that Miami won. It's good that Messi played well. The MLS this past weekend, they got everything that they wanted. Number one, they had David Beckham, on the air, in the studio, owner of Miami. Beckham got his MLS Cup as an owner. Messi got his MLS Cup, as a player, as one of the most marketable players the league has ever seen. Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets will be going out. They played their last professional game, going out as MLS champions. And then I think what was also good, which is not talked about enough, is you have a team like Vancouver who, to get to MLS Cup, had to beat a San Diego team, a good San Diego team at home. And they had their own international star, Thomas Muller from Germany, who's done a great job. So I think, you saw, two different situations. You see Thomas Muller, he's more like the traffic cop on the field for Vancouver, done a lot of good things, taking a lot of the younger players under their wing. So you had like the superpowers, and then you had the team that really wasn't expecting to be there. And ultimately, you saw some good soccer on Saturday. It goes to show you, the league is definitely going in the right direction. The league is very improved. And what's scary is, the MLS Cup was Saturday, and the home opener for 26 is February 21st. So really, really not much of an off season, so to speak.
Yeah,
And listen, it's great for the league. Miami winning is great for the league, and the future I definitely think is very bright. I it's going to be interesting. Locally, the Red Bulls are heavily attached via the media to hiring Michael Bradley, which I think would be a very good move.
and
His
I think
coach,
his dad the coach?
yeah, Bob Bradley.
Bob Wright, his dad was the
He's
coach
co-
of the
Bob
Red. Yeah,
Bradley, has had a very interesting career. I mean, he coached the U.S. national team. He's
yeah,
also in
sure.
MLS. Um, but Michael Bradley is very interesting because I think the Red Bulls have reached a point now where we talk about identity, right? So Michael Bradley's time as a head coach is very limited, right? He just took Red Bull 2 to win. They won the final in their league. Okay. But bringing in Michael Bradley, I think, gives you instant credibility. I don't think it'll be a problem for him to recruit some players to come here. He has shown through Red Bull 2 that he could develop some talent or help develop some young talent. And ultimately, it gives the team what it's been lacking, which is an identity. So I think if that, I think now with MLS Cup and the season being over, that'll probably happen in the next few days, if the rumors are true. And and again, Bradley's a Jersey guy. His dad coached at Princeton. for 11 years, which is where he played. His dad, was with the coach, the Metro Stars. Bradley played for the Metro Stars, and his father has been around the MLS. Bradley knows the league, played in the league, played, abroad, was on the U.S. national team. So I think, in my opinion, now this is a perfect match, for the Red Bulls. And then conversely, New York City hired a new gentleman to run their operation, which is Todd Donovan. Donovan played
Yeah.
at LA Galaxy, and again, that's a name known to the MLS. Donovan was part of the Beckham Donovan years, if you will. So, locally, and New York City had a nice season this year. So I think when you talk about the MLS as a whole, the league is doing very well. But then locally for us, both teams, I think, if the Red Bulls get Bradley, they're already being linked to some players. I think that's a positive thing for us in this area, and New York City seems to be continuing in the right direction. So
Yeah.
very
I mean,
exciting time for the league, especially I think for people that have followed the league for some time, to really see a domestic league grow to what it's become is very impressive, and the
and
level of play. Listen, people, we have a lot of Euro snobs here. Oh, I can't watch MLS. I have to watch this. The way soccer is supposed to work, you're always supposed to support your local team over anybody else. So I think with Messi in the league, Thomas Muller, for example, at Vancouver, and you see these international players are not the focal point of the league, but they really add some sexiness, if you will, to the league, which drums up interest. And I think once people get going, wow, this is a legitimate league. And, going forward, I think even a lot of the people that are used to the European model, really like the MLS playoff format. It's exciting. It's different. It's not done in any other soccer league. And I think European fans take to that a little bit. Probably they take to it much more than they would like to admit.
Yeah, I agree. And if you look at Messi, I guess he had the World Cup in 22, 10 La Liga titles, 4 Champions League trophies, and now he's got an MLS so I mean, he's one of the most dominant players in soccer, and then for him to play in the MLS, like you said, you had Beckham, you had Valderrama come in, you had Thierry Henry, you have a lot of stars that came in MLS, kind of like in the twilight of career. But I think for him to be there, it gives the league a lot of credibility. But I know we're getting up against it. Are you watching any of the Cosmos stuff, the players that they're signing? Anything?
I followed the first player they signed, Sebastian Guinzotti. I watched him play in the second reboot, and then obviously they signed, some local talent. So, it'll be exciting to see them, to get going. They're kind of staying true to their word with, bringing in some local talent. But I'm curious, and I know we're getting caught with the time here. I'm curious to see how the whole USL angle coincides, if you will, going forward with the MLS.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had the one guest on. You also met Michael Lewis, Front Row Soccer. I guess he did a breakdown on the drawings of the World Cup, which I thought was pretty interesting. So if you're into soccer, you can check Michael Lewis out. But I think that's probably all. That's about all for this episode. I'll pass along to Jerry, but I'd like to thank Dave Sturcio, Chop Sports Media, for producing this podcast and also helping us out. But I'll let you take this one out, Jerry. But a lot of good stuff in this episode. Go a little bit longer than we normally did, but we missed last week.
Yeah, we had a lot to catch up.
Yeah, so. But anyway, Jerry,
I will say, Jimmy, this has been a pleasure. It's a little nostalgic for me, this being episode 83, because when I was a kid, I was a huge Ernest Gray fan. And I just want to point out, in 1983, the Giants won 3 games. Ernest Gray caught 78 passes for 1,139 yards and 5 touchdowns. So he was one of my favorite players, next to Phil Simms as a kid. So I think it's fitting that we pay Ernest Gray a little homage today. With that being said, this concludes episode 83. We covered the Giants, the absolute nightmare that they have been lately. This week, the Giants take on the Washington Commanders. So stay tuned for episode 84. It'll be a week from today, and we will wrap up the Giant Commander game, which will be 1 p.m. on Sunday. Jimmy, thanks again. Dave, thank you. Take care, everybody, and we'll catch you next time. Have a great day.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.